The red and blue lights crawled over my living room walls like they were trying to climb inside the picture frames. My mother's wedding photo flashed blue, then red, then blue again. Her white dress and dark hair were frozen mid-laugh, my dad's arm around her. For a second, it looked like the sirens were spilling out of the street and straight into that moment, a warning arriving 30 years too late. Somebody pounded on my front door. "Ms. Mills, police department." I was already halfway off the couch, heart slamming against my ribs. The TV murmured behind me, some late-night documentary still playing with the sound low. My phone screen glowed on the coffee table, one text thread still open. "Dad, I left with your stepmom. We're not coming back. Me. Good luck." It had sounded cold when I sent it. Now, with sirens reflecting off the glass and officers at my door, it sounded like the opening line of a report I was going to have to write. I shoved my feet into the nearest pair of sneakers, not bothering with socks, and crossed the living room. The hardwood was cool under my soles. My uniform hung on the coat rack by the door. Blue jacket, silver oak leaves catching the flashing light with each rotation. I was in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair in a knot, but the rank at my shoulder was still the one that mattered in my head. Lieutenant Commander Kara Mills, Naval Intelligence. I'd been shot at, surveilled, and lied to in 3 languages. This was the first time the police had ever knocked on my door with my own father's name in their mouths. I cracked the deadbolt and opened the door. 2 officers stood on my porch, breath fogging faintly in the early morning chill. The older one had graying hair at the temples and kind eyes. The younger still had that stiff, careful look new cops wore on delicate calls. Red and blue washed over their uniforms, over the bare maple trees, over the neat line of houses on my quiet Virginia cul-de-sac. "Ms. Mills?" the older one asked. His badge read Hamilton. "Yes," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "That's me." He glanced past me into the house, saw the framed photos, the folded flag in its triangular case on the bookshelf, the uniform on the peg. "Mind if we come in?" he asked. "We got a call we need to follow up on. It's about your father." The air in my lungs turned to gravel. I stepped back. "Is he okay?" I asked. "Did something happen?" They exchanged a quick look, the kind I'd seen 1,000 times in briefing rooms. 2 people trying to decide who gets to drop the hard part of the message. "He's physically fine as far as we know," Hamilton said. "He's in Miami, but about an hour ago he filed a report with the department down there, naming you." My stomach dropped. "Naming me how?" I asked. "As a suspect," the younger one said. "Accusing you of financial abuse, fraud, stealing from him." For a second, all I could hear was the hum of the refrigerator, the low drone of the TV behind me, the faint hiss of my own inhale. I actually laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "He accused me of stealing from him?" I repeated. Hamilton's gaze dropped to my phone screen on the coffee table behind me, the text thread still open. "You froze his cards," he said gently. "Changed the locks on the house on Old Willow Lane." "Because that house is mine," I said automatically. "My mother left it to me, and Celeste has been trying to get into those accounts since the funeral. Twice." The word Celeste came out with more teeth than I intended. "Celeste being your stepmother?" the younger officer asked, checking his notes. "For the last year and a half," I said. "Or until last night, apparently." My eyes flicked back to the screen. "I left with your stepmom. We're not coming back." No punctuation, no love dad, no stupid dad emoji. Just a flat line from a man who once hand-wrote grocery lists in fountain pen and triple-checked the tip on every restaurant bill. "What time did he send that?" Hamilton asked, nodding toward my phone. 01:13, I said. DC time. I was half asleep. I told him good luck. Then I did what my mother raised me to do when you don't trust the person holding the cards. You shut the door, he said quietly. I shut the door, I echoed. Hamilton shifted his weight. Miami PD took the report because he was distressed, he said. But when they called us for a local welfare check on you and the property, the sergeant flagged a few things. Your father sounded confused on the phone. Got his own address wrong twice. Couldn't explain why he needed the cards if he'd left for good. A cold draft slipped under the door and wrapped around my ankles. That's not like him, I said. He's had the same checking account number since before I was born. He used to correct bank tellers if they misread his balance. He's meticulous. Has he been forgetful lately? The younger one asked. Any signs of cognitive issues? Repeating stories, getting dates wrong, that kind of thing? Memories flickered. Dad asking me the same question twice on a Sunday call. The way he'd lost his train of thought mid-sentence at Christmas and brushed it off. Celeste snapping, "He's fine, stop treating him like a child." Every time I suggested he see a doctor. Yes, I said. But every time I bring it up, she shuts it down. Says I'm trying to control him. Hamilton's jaw tightened. She answered when we tried his cell earlier, he said. Told the Florida officer you were unhinged and had been plotting to cut him off for months. That's why this came through as a domestic/financial complaint instead of just a wellness check. Of course she did, I muttered. The officers watched my face the way I watched officers in other countries, looking for the micro-expressions that tell you whether you're dealing with panic, guilt, or calculation. What we're seeing more and more, Hamilton said carefully, are cases where a new partner isolates an older person, convinces them the kids are the enemy, then pushes them to move money, sign documents, open accounts. When the family finally tries to intervene, guess who gets painted as the abuser? Me, I said. You, he said. On paper, anyway. He held out a folded printout. Miami emailed us a copy of the initial complaint, he said. You should see what they wrote. I took it. The paper was still warm from their cruiser printer. The text swam for a second before it settled into legible lines. Complainant, Richard Mills, 68. Accused, Kara Mills, daughter. States daughter has frozen his accounts, changed locks on his residence, trying to control every penny. Claims he has no access to his own money and is being held hostage financially. My name in black and white, next to words I'd personally used in reports about other people. My throat tightened. He dictated that? I asked. Hamilton hesitated. He said the broad strokes, he said. But the officer noted he sounded coached. He kept looking off screen, pausing, like someone was prompting him. Celeste's face flashed in my mind. Perfect hair, red nails, that little tilt of her head when she lied. You think he wrote that language? Hamilton added. Held hostage financially? Most folks his age just say, she took my money. I rubbed my forehead. So, what happens now? I asked. Am I under investigation here? He shook his head. Given the deed on the house, your mother's will, the bank flags on the account, and the text you just showed us, no, he said. As far as we're concerned, you're a daughter trying to protect assets that are, in fact, yours. We'll send our notes back to Miami PD. They'll likely close the complaint. The younger officer cleared his throat. But off the record, he said, if this were my dad, I'd be booking a flight. Hamilton nodded. Your father tried to open 3 new lines of credit in Miami this morning, he said. All denied. All flagged as suspicious. That's why we're here at dawn instead of at noon. Something's off. Could be early dementia. Could be pressure. Could be both. Either way, someone down there is tugging hard on him. He looked past me again, to the folded flag and the uniform. Your intel, right? He asked. You know how this goes. The story on paper is almost never the full story. I glanced back at my phone, at the screen still glowing on the coffee table. I left with your stepmom. We're not coming back. When Mom died, he'd driven 3 states to fix my water heater himself because he didn't trust the plumber I'd hired. Now he'd left town without a goodbye. Or maybe someone had taken his phone and typed in a version of his voice. Either way, there was a pattern forming. New wife, isolated father, confusion, credit applications, a complaint that sounded more like her than him. My intel brain lined the data points up like pins on a map. My daughter brain saw only one thing. My father, on a beach somewhere, holding a wallet he didn't understand while someone else steered his life. I don't have jurisdiction there, I said, more to myself than to them. But I have a plane ticket site and a credit card that's still mine. Hamilton smiled faintly. That's more than some people have, he said. If you go, call me before you leave and when you get there. I'll give you the name of a detective in Miami who does nothing but this kind of financial exploitation. Don't confront your stepmother alone. Let the system work with you for once. I nodded. Understood, I said. They stepped back onto the porch, the November air seeping in. Ms. Mills, the younger officer said, pausing. For what it's worth, freezing those cards, that might have just saved him from something worse. I looked past them, at the quiet street, at the curious curtains shifting in my neighbor's windows. It's not going to feel that way to him, I said. Not yet. Maybe not, Hamilton said. But you're not in this to be liked. You're in it to keep him from drowning. The door clicked shut behind them. The lights moved on, taking the red and blue with them, leaving my living room washed in flat, early morning gray. I picked up my phone. The text thread stared back at me. I typed a new message I knew he wouldn't see yet. I'm coming to get you, Dad. Whether you think you need me or not. Then I opened my laptop, pulled up the airline site, and started doing the one thing my job and my mother had both trained me for. Following the trail. All the way to wherever he'd gone running, and to whoever was holding the other end of the line. The airline website glowed harsh and blue in the dim of my kitchen. I watched the little spinning circle under processing payment, like it was an enemy contact moving on a screen. The hum of the refrigerator and the distant whoosh of a car on the main road were the only sounds. Booking confirmed. Flight to Miami, boarding in 4 hours. I exhaled. My phone buzzed before I could close the laptop. Hamilton. Lieutenant Commander, he said when I picked up. Didn't mean to spook you with the early visit. You didn't, I said. The text did. The complaint just clarified the picture. I figured, he said. Paper rustled on his end. I ran your dad's name through the usual. Our banks show 3 attempted credit applications at Florida-based branches in the last 12 hours. All denied. One for a line he already has and never uses. This guy's had the same checking account for 37 years. That jump is not nothing. I leaned against the counter, the laminate cool against my hip. That's not him, I said. Or it's not only him. Miami's fraud unit is good, he said. Ask for Detective Elena Alvarez. I'll email her a heads up with what we've got from this side. Your mother's will, the deed, the prior attempts by your stepmother to access the house. Thank you, I said. Kara? He added, voice softening. You're doing the right thing, even if he calls you the villain the whole way. I'm used to being the villain in other people's briefings, I said. Occupational hazard. He chuckled. Text me when you land, he said, and good luck. The words hit different in his mouth than they had in mine. After we hung up, the house felt too still. I showered on autopilot, the water pounding my shoulders, steam fogging the mirror. When I wiped it clear, a tired, pale woman with dark circles stared back, hair pulled into a functional bun, jaw set. I threw my uniform into a garment bag and opted for jeans, a plain navy t-shirt, and a jacket with my ID tucked inside. Intel had taught me when to blend and when to broadcast. This trip needed both. On the drive to the airport, the sky bruised from black to gray pink. Harvested fields slid past, stark and bare. My father had taught me to drive on these roads, hands at 10 and 2, radio low, speed limit exact. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, screen lighting up. Voicemail notification. Dad hadn't called. Celeste had. I hit play, speaker low. Her voice poured out, honey over metal. Kara, she cooed. I heard you've been busy. Freezing cards, changing locks. You do realize your father is not your child, right? He's told me all about your control issues. A pause. I could almost hear her smiling. He's fine, she went on. We're fine. More than fine, actually. Sunshine is good for him. If you keep meddling, though, you're going to regret it. For someone in intelligence, you don't seem very smart about how this looks from the outside. Grown man, terrified of his unstable daughter? You're writing your own case file, sweetheart. The message clicked off. For a moment, all I saw was the windshield, the pale strip of highway, and the reflection of my own eyes, flat and cold. She'd picked the wrong career field to threaten with optics. At the airport, everything smelled like overused sanitizer and cheap coffee. The security line shuffled forward under harsh fluorescent lights. Wheels rolled, boarding calls crackled. A toddler wailed somewhere near Gate 12. I slid my ID and boarding pass across to TSA, grateful I'd traveled in uniform enough times that my body knew the choreography even out of it. Belt off, laptop out, shoes in the bin. The conveyor motor hummed, carrying my items through. A frozen card alert pinged my phone as I laced my sneakers back up. Bank alert. Declined purchase. Miami Beach. Amount? $843.76. Location? Ocean Crest Hotel. They weren't even subtle. On the flight, cramped in a middle seat that smelled faintly of stale popcorn and someone else's perfume, I watched the ground fall away through the oval window. The patchwork fields turned into cloud cover, white and blank. I pulled out a small notebook. Paper, not digital, old habit. On the left page I wrote, Dad, Richard Mills, 68, retired engineer. Widowed 3 years, married Celeste 18 months ago. On the right, observed changes, repeats questions, forgets dates, cancels visits at last minute. Celeste booked something. Hands phone to Celeste when I call. Sudden interest in new investments after decades of OCD-level money habits. Under that I wrote, Actions. Text. I left with your stepmom. We're not coming back. Me. Froze cards, changed locks, per mom's will. Complaint from Miami. Language sounds like Celeste. Multiple declined credit attempts. Voicemail. Gaslighting, threat, framing me as unstable. Patterns. I'd built careers on recognizing patterns before other people wanted to see them. This one hurt more. The plane bumped slightly, turbulence shivering through the cabin. I closed the notebook and let my head rest back against the seat, eyes closed, the hum of the engines filling my ears. Dad's face floated up behind my eyelids, frowning in concentration over my algebra homework. hand hovering over my first car's engine. Brow furrowed as he read Mom's will at the kitchen table, lips pressed tight but eyes wet. He'd always been sharp, annoyingly so. The idea of someone else steering his hand while he signed papers he didn't fully understand made my stomach twist. By the time we touched down in Miami, the cabin air felt thick and damp. As soon as the aircraft door opened, that heavy, humid heat rushed in, smelling like jet fuel and sea air and something sweet underneath. Outside, the sun was bright and already too hot on my DC-adjusted skin. Miami PD's Financial Crimes Office was a low building with buzzing fluorescent lights and scuffed linoleum, indistinguishable from half the municipal spaces I'd sat in overseas, except for the faint smell of cafecito drifting from a break room. Detective Elena Alvarez met me in a small conference room with no windows, a stack of folders under one arm. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her sleeves were rolled to the elbow, ink from an old case smeared faintly on one cuff. "Lieutenant Commander Mills," she said, shaking my hand. Her grip was firm, her eyes clear. "Elena Alvarez, Hamilton sent me your file. Grab a seat." I sat. The chair squeaked. She dropped the folders on the table. Most people's lives looked messy in paper form. My father's looked like a quiet man living within his means until about 18 months ago. Then the stains started. Multiple new inquiries, out-of-state charges, large dinners in tourist traps, jewelry stores. "Walk me through your side," she said. I gave her the short, operational version. My mother's will, the house, the shift when Celeste arrived, the canceled visits, the snapped phone calls, the late-night text, the freezing of the cards, the cops at my door. She nodded, jotting notes. "You did the right thing with the cards," she said. "He doesn't think so," I said. "Of course he doesn't," she replied. "He's scared and under someone else's narrative. Whoever controls the story controls the target."
Right now, that's Celeste.
She flipped open one of the folders. "Your father filed the complaint from a hotel on the beach," she said. "Ocean Crest. He's got a room there, paid with one of the last cards that hadn't been frozen yet. Since then, almost all the charges are at the hotel bar, the restaurant, and a few nearby boutiques." "His life savings in mojitos and handbags," I muttered. "More like his savings in someone else's mojitos and handbags," she said. "We've already flagged one man on the cameras, a Vic Larson. He's on our radar. Likes to befriend older tourists at hotel bars." I leaned forward. "So what's the plan?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Not to bust into the hotel room with you in tow and start shouting," she said. "That's the movie version. The real version starts with evidence." She tapped the folder. "We've already requested surveillance footage from the hotel," she said. "We'll see who's actually using those cards. In the meantime, I suggest you go there, check your father's condition in person, but you let hotel security and our uniforms handle any confrontation with Celeste. You document everything. Dates, times, quotes. You think like intel, not like a daughter whose feelings just got detonated." Too late for that, I thought. But the intel muscle still worked. She slid a printed sheet across the table. "This is our initial wellness check form," she said. "If your father's showing signs of cognitive impairment, we can leverage that into protections. He can still be independent, but with guardrails. Think of it like freezing a different kind of account." He hated rails. He'd built his life around being his own system. But the alternative was letting someone else write his ending. "I'll go to the hotel," I said. "Talk to staff. See him. But I won't go near her without backup." "Good," she said. "I'll notify them you're coming. Ask for Melissa at the front desk and James in security. They've seen this song before." Outside, The heat hit me like a wet towel as soon as the station door swung open. Traffic roared 3 lanes deep. Palm trees swayed in the exhaust-laden air. The sky was a blue so bright it almost hurt. The Ocean Crest lobby smelled like chlorine, sunscreen, and money. Cool air washed over me as I stepped inside, carrying the faint scent of citrus cleaner. Families in beachwear drifted past, dripping seawater onto the gleaming tile. Somewhere, ice clinked in glasses. The woman at the front desk wore a name badge that said Melissa and a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome to the Ocean Crest," she began automatically. "Checking in?" "Not exactly," I said, sliding my ID across. "Lieutenant Commander Kara Mills. I'm here about a guest, Richard Mills. Room under his name?" Her smile faltered as she scanned my ID. "Oh," she said. "You're his daughter." That told me enough. "You've met my stepmother," I said. Her jaw tightened. "Yes," she said carefully. "We've had interactions." I leaned in slightly. "I'm working with Detective Alvarez," I said. "Financial crimes. We're concerned about his welfare. I'm not here to cause a scene. I just want to see my father and make sure he's okay." Melissa exhaled, relief flickering. "James has been waiting for this," she said under her breath. "Give me 1 second." She picked up the phone, murmured something, then gestured toward a hallway. "Security office is down there," she said. "James will meet you. We've pulled some things you'll want to see." The security office was small, cluttered, and humming with electronics. Monitors lined one wall, showing grainy views of the lobby, the bar, the pool, elevators, hallways. The air was cool and smelled faintly of coffee and overheated circuitry. A broad-shouldered man in a polo shirt with a security logo stood from behind the main console. His badge read, James. "Commander Mills," he said, offering a hand. "We've been expecting you." "Just Kara is fine," I said, shaking it. His grip was firm, no theatrics. "I'm told you have concerns about my father." He snorted. "I have concerns about half the retirees who wander in here thinking Miami Beach is a fairy tale," he said. "But your old man? Yeah. He's been on my mental list since check-in." He turned to the screens, fingers flying over the keyboard. "Alvarez asked us to flag any charges that didn't match his normal pattern," he said. "We started watching tape. You're going to want to sit down for this." My knees didn't feel like they'd hold me even if I refused, so I sank onto the spare chair, its padding thin. James tapped a key. One of the screens flickered, then settled on a time-stamped view of the hotel bar. The image was clear enough to see my father. He sat hunched on a stool, shirt buttoned wrong at the bottom, eyes unfocused as he stared at a glass of something amber. Next to him, Celeste leaned in, blonde hair perfect, hand on his arm, lips close to his ear. On his other side, a man in his 40s with a loungy posture and slicked back hair, Vic, I guessed, laughed at something she said, then slid a small, shiny card toward the bartender. The bartender shook his head, pointed at the register. Celeste rolled her eyes, turned to my father, took a card from his wallet, and handed it over with a practiced flick. The charge went through. Dad blinked, slow, like he was lagging behind his own life. James tapped another key, a different angle, different time. Celeste and Vic at the pool bar, no Dad in sight. Laughing, drinking, her phone on the table, screen lighting with what looked like a bank app. She signed a receipt with Richard Mills' name. My hand curled into a fist in my lap. "Hotel charges to his room require a signature," James said quietly. "She's been signing for him. Sometimes when he's there, sometimes when he's not. We've got hours of this." He clicked again. Another clip. Dad at the front desk, looking bewildered as Melissa tried to explain a declined charge. Celeste hovering, voice sharp, pushing him to just use the other card. his hands shaking as he fumbled with the wallet. "We did a welfare check in the room yesterday," James said. "He said he was fine. She answered half the questions for him. I didn't like it, but I'm not a cop. I document, I flag, I wait." He paused the footage on my father's face, creased, confused, smaller than I remembered. "And now you're here," he said, "with Alvarez in the loop, which means we don't have to pretend this is just marital issues anymore." He reached for his radio. "You ready to go upstairs?" he asked. "We'll have an officer there when we knock. And we'll keep that camera rolling." My throat felt tight. I nodded. "Let's go see how much of my dad is still in there," I said. As we stepped into the elevator, the mirrored walls reflected three faces: a security chief, a Navy intel officer, and a woman who was about to knock on a hotel room door and ask her own father if he felt safe, knowing full well that answering honestly might blow up the only relationship he thought he had left. The elevator chimed softly at the 11th floor. The doors slid open on a carpeted hallway that smelled like hotel air freshener and old air conditioning, an oddly sterile mix of citrus and dust. A distant ice machine hummed. Somewhere, a TV droned faintly behind a closed door. Officer Delgado was already waiting by room 1114. He was in uniform, posture relaxed but attentive, radio clipped to his shoulder. He nodded when he saw us, eyes flicking over my jeans, my jacket, the ID badge clipped inside. "Commander Mills?" he asked. "Kara," I said. "You must be Delgado." "Yes, ma'am," he said. "Detective Alvarez briefed me. This is a welfare check and a documented interview. Body cam is on." He tapped the small unit on his chest. The tiny red light blinked steadily. James positioned himself a few feet back, near the wall camera, tablet in hand. The hallway felt narrower with all three of us standing there, as if the walls leaned in to hear. I swallowed. "Ready?" Delgado asked. As if I ever would be. "Yes," I said. He knocked. Firm, official, the way you would if you had a warrant, minus the shout. "Mr. Mills?" he called. "Miami Beach Police." Silence. For a moment, I thought nobody was there. Then came the faint shuffle of feet, a muttered curse, the latch turning. The door opened a crack. My father peered out. He looked smaller. That was the first thing. His once broad shoulders seemed to sag, the fabric of his button-down hanging looser. He hadn't shaved. Gray stubble roughened his jaw. His eyes, usually sharp enough to spot a miscalculation at 50 paces, were hazy. "Kara?" he said, squinting past Delgado. "What are you doing here?" My chest clenched at the sound of my name in his voice. He still sounded like him. Mostly. "Hi, Dad," I said. "I caught an early flight." His gaze flicked to the officer's uniform, the camera, then to James down the hall. "What's this?" he asked, paranoia flickering. "Did you call the cops on me?" "No, sir," Delgado said. "We're just here to make sure you're okay. Miami PD got a call from your hometown department. Standard check-in." Dad frowned, rubbing his temple. "I'm fine," he said. "I'm on vacation. With my wife. We're adults." "Is Celeste here?" I asked. He blinked, looked back into the room. "She went out," he said, "to get sunscreen." James glanced at his tablet. "The pool deck cams haven't seen her in hours," he murmured. My father's fingers tightened on the door edge. "I don't need a babysitter," he snapped. Then softer, to me. "You shouldn't have come. She said you'd make trouble." There it was, her voice riding on his tongue. I forced my shoulders to relax. "Dad, can we come in?" I asked. Just to talk? If you tell Officer Delgado to leave, he will. But I'd like him to hear that I'm not here to drag you home in handcuffs. Delgado nodded. That's right, sir, he said. We're here for your safety, not to arrest anyone.
Not today, anyway. He added the last part lightly, but it landed. My father hesitated. His gaze darted to Delgado's camera, then to my face. For a second, I saw a flicker of the man who used to fix my toys with a precision screwdriver and a magnifying glass. Door's open, he said finally. Come on, then. He stepped back. The room smelled like hotel linens and something sour underneath. Old takeout, spilled liquor. The curtains were half drawn, letting in a stripe of blinding sunlight across the bed. Suitcases lay open on the floor. A floral scarf hung from a chair. Celeste's scent clung to the air, expensive perfume and hairspray, without her body present. On the dresser, there was an empty space where a wallet might have sat. Delgado took position near the wall, giving us space but keeping my father in his line of sight. James lingered in the doorway, staying just inside the camera's field. I sat on the edge of the chair by the window. Dad paced once, then sat on the bed, hands on his knees. You froze my cards, he said. No preamble, no small talk. You changed the locks. You've made me look like a fool in front of my wife. His voice shook more with hurt than anger. I swallowed. My lawyer and Mom's lawyer both advised me to, I said. Mom left that house to me. Celeste has tried twice to get into those accounts. When I got your text, he cut in, brow wrinkling. What text? He asked. My skin prickled. The one last night, I said slowly. From your phone, saying you left with her and you weren't coming back. He looked genuinely baffled. I didn't send that, he said. Delgado's gaze sharpened. Sir, do you have your phone? He asked. Dad patted his pockets, checked the nightstand. His movements grew more frantic. She took it, he muttered. Borrowed it to call someone. Said hers was dead, He trailed off. Do you know where it is now? I asked. He shook his head. No, he said. She was going to get sunscreen. She'll be back. James glanced at his tablet again, jaw tightening. She left 2 hours ago, he said. We've got footage of her leaving through the side entrance with the man we know as Vic. She had a bag with her. We haven't seen her since. My father's mouth opened and closed. Vic? He repeated. He's just a friend from the bar. A friend who signs your name on half your receipts, James said. Delgado stepped forward just enough that his camera caught my father's face full on. Mr. Mills, he said gently, we're going to ask you a few questions, just to get a sense of how you're doing. Is that okay? Dad rubbed his forehead. Do I have a choice? He muttered. Yes, Delgado said. You always have a choice, but answering helps us help you. He hesitated, then nodded. Okay, he said, but I'm fine. Can you tell me your full name? Delgado asked. Richard Allen Mills, he said, too fast. Born May 17th, 1955. Right. The basics were still wired deep. And your daughter's name? Delgado asked, nodding toward me. Kara Elizabeth Mills, he said. Lieutenant Commander, Navy. Smartest person I ever met when she's not acting like she knows better than her own father. The jab had no heat. If I'm the smartest person you ever met, I said quietly, maybe listen to me when I say something's wrong. He glared half-heartedly, then looked back at Delgado. Where are we right now? Delgado asked. Hotel, Dad said. On the beach.
Do you know the name? Delgado pressed. Ocean something, he said. Crestview. She booked it. I just followed. Do you know what city? Delgado asked. He frowned. Miami, he said. Or near it. Beach. Do you know today's date? Delgado asked. He hesitated. It's November, he said. Thanksgiving was last week or the week before? It was 5 days ago, I said. He rubbed his eyes. Feels like a year, he muttered. Delgado glanced at me, then back at him. Mr. Mills, he said, do you feel safe right now? The question hung in the air. I'd asked variations of it in interview rooms in other countries. Heard people say yes when they meant no, and no when they were so numb they'd forgotten what safe felt like. My father stared at his hands. His knuckles were spotted, veins more prominent than I remembered. They trembled slightly. Of course, he started. His voice cracked. He swallowed. No, he said finally, barely audible. No, I don't. Not really. My throat burned. Can you tell me why? Delgado asked gently. Dad's eyes filled, the moisture magnified by the harsh Florida light. She took my wallet, he said. Said she'd only have it for a bit, to straighten things out. Cards kept getting declined. She said it was because of you, because you were cutting her off. Needed to open new ones. I didn't understand. Numbers didn't make sense. They always made sense before. He looked up at me, panic and shame mixed. I keep losing my train of thought, he said, voice hoarse. I forget why I walked into rooms. I put my keys in the freezer. I thought, if I just pretended it wasn't happening, it would go away. She said it was just old age, and that you were being dramatic, trying to put me in a home if I slipped once. A tear slid down his cheek. I believed her, he whispered, because she was here, and you were far. The distance landed like a physical thing. States, flights, holidays I'd spent on deployment instead of in this room. This morning, he continued. She got mad when the card didn't work, said it was your fault, said you were trying to control everything. She packed a bag, said we were going to start fresh somewhere else, away from your claws. He laughed, sharp and self-directed. I got dizzy in the lobby, he said. Sat down. Next thing I knew, she was gone. I thought maybe she'd just needed air. She always needs air when I ask too many questions. His gaze slid to the empty space on the dresser. I keep reaching for my wallet, he said. For my phone. For my anchor. And I come up empty. Delgado exchanged a quick look with James. The security chief tapped his radio. Alvarez, you there? He murmured. We've got a voluntary no on feeling safe, an admission that she took his wallet and phone. You might want to move on the rental. Static crackled, then Alvarez's voice came through, brisk. Already on it, she said. We've got units near the beach property the card was used at last. As soon as we confirm she's there, we'll bring her in. Keep him in the room, keep the camera rolling. If he's willing, we'll get a statement when I arrive. Copy, James said. Dad looked lost. Kara, he said, did I really tell the police you stole from me? I sat forward, elbows on my knees. You filed a complaint, I said, from your phone, maybe with help. It said I'd frozen your accounts and changed the locks on the house, which is true. It just left out why. He winced. I didn't want to think of you as the bad guy, he said. But she kept telling me stories, showing me texts out of context, saying you were just like your mother, always trying to control everything. The mention of my mother hit like a slap. She made it sound reasonable, he said, that you'd want everything, that you'd cut me out if I let you. I felt cornered, like I had to pick a side, and she was the one in the room with me. I swallowed hard. I froze your cards because they were tied to accounts Mom meant to keep safe, I said. I changed the locks because Celeste tried to get into that house twice when you were too tired to be there. I wasn't trying to control you. I was trying to control the damage. He covered his face with his hands. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I should have trusted you. I just didn't want to admit I needed help. You trusted the wrong person, I said. That's not a crime. It's what people like her count on. James's radio crackled again. Security to James, came a voice. PD just picked up a female and one male at the Beachcrest rental. Names match Celeste Mills and Victor Larson. They've got a bag with multiple IDs and cards, some in the name of Richard Mills. James exhaled sharply. Copy that, he said. We'll keep the party calm up here. He looked at my father. Sir, he said, they found her. With Vic. And with your things. Dad's hands dropped from his face. What? He said. Celeste is in custody, Delgado clarified. Along with the gentleman from the bar. They had your wallet, your ID, your cards, and a stack of receipts. My father blinked once. Twice. Maybe it's a misunderstanding, he said weakly. She said he was just helping us find good deals. Maybe she... Dad, I said softly. We have footage of her signing your name at the bar while you weren't there. We have her on camera leaving with your bag. We have her voice on my voicemail threatening me from meddling with your finances. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a scheme. He opened his mouth, closed it. The room felt very small. The man who taught me to double-check receipts and balance checkbooks stared at the empty dresser like he could rewind the last 18 months. This can't be real, he whispered. She said she loved me. I moved from the chair to the edge of the bed, close enough that our knees almost touched. Maybe she liked parts of you, I said quietly. But she loved what you represented. Stability, accounts, a house in your name. People like her, they don't need to hate you to ruin you. They just need access. His shoulders shook once. Why would she do that? He asked, voice breaking. What did I do? You got lonely, I said. You were kind. You believed what you wanted to believe. That's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to protect. Delgado glanced at James, then back at us. You willing to give a statement when Detective Alvarez gets here? He asked. About the cards, the text, the way she talked about your daughter? Dad wiped his eyes with a shaky hand. I don't know if I can remember it all, he admitted. Sometimes it's foggy. That's okay, I said. We'll fill in the parts you can't. That's what I'm here for. He looked at me like a man noticing a lighthouse he'd forgotten was on his shore. Why are you here? He asked suddenly. After what she told you I said. After that complaint. After everything. I thought of my mother, of the way she'd signed the will, fingers thin, eyes fierce. Protect him when he doesn't know he needs it anymore, she'd told me. I'm here, I said, because I believe your real voice more than the one she tried to put in your mouth. And because I'm my mother's daughter. He shut his eyes. When he opened them again, they were clearer. Can I
Hold your hand? He asked. The question startled me more than anything. He'd held my hand crossing streets, let go when I was 12 with a joke about being too old for that. Now, at 68, he was asking like a child. I reached out. His fingers curled around mine, brittle and warm. You're not in trouble, I said. But she is. Let us do our job. Downstairs, somewhere between the hotel lobby and the station, a woman who'd underestimated a Navy intel officer and a stubborn old engineer was being escorted into a cruiser with a bag full of stolen things. Up here, in a room that smelled like stale cologne and ocean air, the man she'd tried to isolate finally had to choose which voice he trusted. Hers, or the daughter who'd frozen his cards, changed the locks, and flown across states not to punish him, but to pull him back from the edge he didn't even realize he was standing on. Detective Alvarez arrived with the smell of hot pavement and air conditioning still clinging to her blazer. She stepped into the room with a small notebook, a larger presence, and eyes that took everything in. The rumpled bed, the open suitcases, the space on the dresser where the wallet should have been, the way my father still gripped my hand like an anchor. Mr. Mills, she said, offering a small, respectful nod. Detective Elena Alvarez. We spoke briefly earlier, over the phone. He blinked. We did? He asked. Yes, sir, she said. You filed a complaint with our department about your daughter. I'm here to update you on that situation. Color rose under his stubble. I might have been upset, he muttered. I didn't understand what she was doing. Freezing cards, changing locks. It felt like betrayal. Alvarez's gaze flicked to me, then back. Feelings can be real even when they're based on bad information, she said. That's why we gather facts. She glanced at Delgado's body cam light. Is it all right if we keep recording while we talk? She asked. It protects all of us. He nodded. Fine, he said. I've already made a fool of myself. What's one more file? It's not about fools, she said. It's about patterns. She turned slightly to include me. We've just detained Celeste Mills and Victor Larson at a beach rental, she said. They were in possession of your wallet, your identification, and multiple credit cards in your name. We also found a folder with printed credit applications and receipts for cards you don't remember opening, all in your name. His shoulders sagged. I signed things, he whispered. She said they were hotel forms, loyalty programs, discounts. I didn't read all of them. The print was small, my eyes... He trailed off. Did she ever discourage you from reading them? Alvarez asked. Say anything if you took too long? He nodded, shame in the motion. She'd say I was overthinking everything, he said. That's what killed my first marriage, according to her. That my need for control drove people away. She said, if I trusted her, I'd just sign. He looked at me, apology raw. I thought I was being easy to live with, he said. Not reckless. You were being groomed, Alvarez said simply. They convince you your instincts are the problem, so you'll hand them the keys. That's not a character flaw. That's a strategy. Their strategy. He swallowed. I filed that complaint against my own daughter, he said. What happens to that? That's why I'm here, she said. Given what we found, your wallet in their possession, the footage of them using your cards, the voicemails where Celeste threatens Kara for meddling, we're recommending that the complaint be withdrawn as unfounded. Instead, our office will be opening a case against Celeste Mills and Victor Larson for financial exploitation of an elderly person, fraud, and identity theft. He winced at the word elderly. I'm not, he started. Alvarez held up a hand, understanding. It's a legal category, Mr. Mills, she said. Not a commentary on your worth. It just gives us more tools and more consequences for them. He let out a shaky breath. How did I not see it? He asked, more to himself than to any of us. I'm not stupid. I've managed projects, budgets, teams. I built our first house's wiring by hand. And I let her do this. You saw what she wanted you to see, I said quietly. A story where you were still sharp, still in control, still the rescuer. And a story where I was the meddling daughter trying to take that away from you. He nodded, eyes watering. She said you would show up and make a scene, he admitted. Prove you were unhinged. He looked around the room, at the cop, the detective, the security chief. Instead, you flew down, sat by my bed, and held my hand, he said. You froze the cards and she accused you of stealing. You changed the locks and she called it kidnapping. But you were the only one actually closing doors where the water was coming in. Alvarez's expression softened. We'd like you to come downstairs for a bit, she said. We can show you some of the hotel's security footage and walk through some of the charges. You won't have to remember every date or amount. That's what the paper is for. You just have to tell us if what you're seeing tracks with your experience. He wiped his eyes again. Do I have to watch all of it? He asked, sounding older than his age. No, she said. Just enough to understand we're not guessing. He looked at me. Will you stay? He asked. Every second, I said. In the security office, the air felt cooler. The hum of the monitors was almost soothing. Outside, I could see the glittering rectangle of the pool, the pale blur of the beach, tourists moving like oblivious pieces on a board. James queued up the footage again. This time, it wasn't just me watching. Dad sat stiffly in the chair, glasses on, eyes wide. On the screen, he saw himself at the bar, shoulders hunched, staring at his drink while Celeste laughed with Vic. He saw her slide his card across the counter. He saw his own signature at the bottom of the receipt, shaky but recognizable. That looks like me, he said. But I don't remember that night. Do you remember signing? Alvarez asked. I remember her saying the bartender messed up, he murmured, that they needed a second signature. I didn't know it was the third charge that night. James tapped to the next clip. Pool bar. No dad. Just Celeste and Vic, suntanned and smug, clinking glasses. She scrawled his name on the slip, not even attempting to mimic his handwriting. Dad flinched. I wasn't there, he said. I was upstairs, I think, watching some game. She said she was getting ice. Do you see why we're concerned? Alvarez asked gently. He nodded, lips pressed tight. And here, James said, pulling up lobby footage. This is yesterday. On screen, my father appeared again, smaller in the wide shot, standing by the front desk. He dug in his wallet, confusion on his face. Melissa gestured to the screen over the register, probably explaining the declined charge. Celeste hovered, eyes narrowed, mouth thin. She took the wallet from his hands with a quick, impatient motion. He let her. She said it was your fault, he whispered. That you were punishing me. That you'd cut me off because I dared to be happy. His shoulders shook once. She said you were twisting your mother's will into a weapon, he said. That you always thought you knew better than everyone. I didn't want to believe it, but I didn't want to look too closely either. It was easier to nod, to sign. Alvarez slid a printed page across the table. This is the complaint you filed, she said. We're not reading it to shame you, just to help you see how the story was framed.
He took it with trembling hands. I watched his eyes move over the words he'd supposedly spoken. Held hostage financially. Unstable daughter. Controlling every penny. His face went slack. I don't talk like this, he said, voice dull. I wouldn't call you unstable. I might think you're being overprotective, but I wouldn't. His finger jabbed a line. I didn't say this, he said. She did. We suspected as much, Alvarez said. That's why we're here, and not at your daughter's house with a warrant. But having you recognize it matters. He crumpled the edge of the paper. How much did they take? He asked. James and Alvarez exchanged a glance. Between charges we can prove and attempted lines that were stopped, Alvarez said. You're out maybe 5 figures. Less than it could have been, thanks to those frozen cards and some suspicious bankers. More than it ever should have been. He closed his eyes briefly. Your pension, Social Security, investments, those are still intact, she added quickly. Because your daughter put blocks on anything she could. This could have been much worse. He opened his eyes, looked at me. You cost her a lot of money, he said. That's why she needed me to turn on you. I shrugged, throat tight. Worth every penny she didn't get, I said. He gave a broken little laugh. This is my fault, he said suddenly. I should have seen it. I should have listened to you. I should have... Stop, I said, sharper than I meant. You sound like me reading casualty reports and blaming myself for every variable I couldn't control. He stared, surprised. I've been in rooms where good people made bad calls because they were exhausted, lonely, scared, I said. I've read letters from families asking why their son trusted the wrong person on a road outside Kandahar. The truth is, con artists and insurgents work off the same playbook. Find the vulnerable, isolate them, tell them every other voice is the enemy. I leaned forward. You got hit by a tactic, I said. Not because you're stupid, because you're human. The only person whose fault this is lives in a holding cell right now, wondering how long her sentence is going to be. He took that in slowly. What happens to her? He asked. Prosecutors will review the case, Alvarez said. Given your age, the pattern of spending, the documented cognitive issues your doctor will confirm, and the physical evidence we found, charges are likely. She can fight them, that's her right, but the paper trail isn't her friend. He swallowed. And me? He asked. Do I go to jail for filing a false report? No, she said. We're treating that as part of the pattern of manipulation. If you're willing to give a statement retracting it and explaining how it came about, that helps us and you. He nodded. I'll do it, he said. I don't want my daughter's name in some system as a thief when she's the one who kept me from ending up like those stories on the news. His voice trailed off. What about after? He asked. I go home. I forget where I left my keys. I panic. There's no Celeste to blame, just me and my memory slipping. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Vulnerability had always been something he treated like a bug in code. Identify, eliminate. Now it was winning. I put my hand over his on the table. After, I said, we get you a doctor who specializes in that. Not a Dr. Google or some quack she found on Facebook. A real neurologist. We put your accounts under monitored status. Shared viewing, dual signatures on anything big. We get you a daily money manager who reports to both of us. We build guardrails, not cages. He blinked rapidly. And where do I live? He asked. In a home? Down the street? Across the country? You live where you can be safest and still feel like yourself, I said. If that's in my guest room for a while, fine.
If that's in an independent living place with cafeteria food and bingo, we'll pick the least terrible one. You don't have to decide today. His mouth twisted. I hate that this is where we are, he said. That I can't just go back to being the guy who balanced his checkbook to the penny and drove his daughter crazy with spreadsheets. I miss that guy too, I said. But I like the one who just admitted he needs help, more than the one who lets someone else weaponize his pride. He let out a rough chuckle. Your mother would have skinned me alive, he said, for letting this happen, and then hugged me until I stopped shaking. She'd be proud you listened before it got worse, I said. Even if it took sirens and a fraud detective to get you there. Alvarez stood, gathering the papers. I'm going to give you both a little space, she said. Then, if you're willing, we'll head to the station to get formal statements and revoke her access to anything she still touches. Hotel's comping you another night. You shouldn't have to sprint to the airport right after this. My father looked at her, then at me. I'm tired, he said. I know, I replied. We'll do the hard part in pieces. James muted the monitors, screens dimming. The room suddenly felt quiet, the hum of electronics fading into the background. Dad turned his hand under mine, palm up, fingers curling.
When you texted good luck, he said, what did you mean? I thought about it. Last night, half asleep, I'd meant, fine, go ruin your life with her. I'm done begging you to see what's in front of you. Now, sitting in a security office with his hand trembling under mine, I felt something different. I meant, I said slowly, that if you were really choosing her over me, over Mom's wishes, over everything we built, you'd need it. You didn't need luck. You needed someone to pull the emergency brake. I just didn't realize I'd be the only one willing to yank it. He let out a shaky breath that might have been a laugh. You always did drive like your mother, he said, hard on the brakes. Better than going over the cliff, I said. He nodded. His grip tightened. In the complaint, he said quietly, I used words she fed me. Unstable, controlling, abuser. He swallowed, eyes bright again. But when the officers asked today if I felt safe, he added, the only word in my head was no. And the only face I wanted in the doorway was yours. His voice cracked on the last word. I squeezed his hand. Good, I said, because now that I'm here, I'm not letting go just because she says I should. Outside the security office, tourists laughed, ordered drinks, slathered on sunscreen. The world spun as usual. Inside, under a hum of cameras and fluorescence, a retired engineer and his intel officer daughter sat with a stack of papers, a handful of ugly truths, and the fragile beginning of a new understanding. Protecting someone doesn't always look like sitting vigil at their bedside or saying yes to every request. Sometimes it looks like freezing cards, changing locks, catching a flight, and standing your ground in a hotel security office while the person you love realizes that the only betrayal that really mattered wasn't you saying no. It was them believing a voice that never had their best interests at heart. The station conference room was colder than the hotel. Thin carpet, humming fluorescent lights, walls that had seen too many sad stories in cheap frames. Dad sat at the end of the table, a styrofoam cup of water in front of him. His hands shook when he reached for it, so he stopped trying. His gaze drifted between the door and the pile of papers Alvarez had laid out. Printouts of charges, screenshots of applications, a transcription of the complaint he'd filed. I'd sat in rooms like this halfway around the world, debriefing people who just realized someone they trusted had been playing a different game. It was different when the person in the chair was your father. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Mills, Alvarez said. We'll go at your pace. This is a voluntary statement. You can stop at any time. He nodded, throat bobbing. I'll just say it, he murmured. What I remember, anyway. She hit record on a small device, the red light blinking softly. Please state your name and date of birth, she said. Richard Allen Mills, he replied. 17 May, 1955. And do you understand why you're here? She asked. He took a breath. Because I accused my daughter of something she didn't do, he said. And because my wife did things I didn't want to see. He glanced at me. I nodded, encouraging. He swallowed. I met Celeste at a grief group, he began. She lit up the room, said she understood what it was to lose someone. She laughed at my bad jokes. She let me talk about my wife without changing the subject. After years of silence in that house, it felt like oxygen. His fingers twisted together. She moved in fast, he said. Friends raised eyebrows. Kara raised concerns. I told them they didn't know her, that they didn't see her at 3 a.m. when I woke up panicking and she held my hand. He looked down at his own hands, empty now. Then the little things started, he continued. She'd answer the phone when Kara called, say I was napping or too tired. Tell me about the call afterward, but shaped. She'd say Kara thought I was losing it, trying to put me in a home, that she only cared about the house, the accounts. Every time I brought up something I didn't remember right, she'd say, don't tell Kara, she'll use it against you. He sniffed. I let her be the filter, he said, because it was easier than admitting I couldn't trust my own memory. The more I messed up little things, dates, appointments, the more I clung to her version. She was there. Kara was pixels on a screen. He glanced at me again, guilt deepening the lines around his eyes. When my card started getting declined, he said, she said it was because Kara had gone nuclear. Her words. That freezing the accounts was some power play. She was furious. Said my own daughter was treating me like a child. She shoved the phone in my hand, told me to tell the police what she was doing. He pointed to the complaint printout. I parroted what she told me, he said. I don't think I understood half of it. I was tired, embarrassed, angry. It felt easier to be mad at my daughter far away than at the woman sitting next to me. His voice cracked. She typed some of it, he admitted. The fancy words. Financially held hostage. I don't talk like that. I just signed my name to the bottom, like I did with all those other papers. Alvarez nodded, jotting notes. Do you understand now why your daughter did what she did? She asked, freezing the cards, changing the locks. He let out a long, shaky breath. Yes, he said. She was the only one doing what my first wife would have done, closing the barn door while the horses were still inside. I just didn't want to see that the fox was already in the pen. The farm metaphors made him sound like himself again. It hurt and helped at the same time. Has anyone ever evaluated your memory concerns? Alvarez asked gently. A neurologist, a geriatric specialist? He shook his head. I made an appointment once, he said. Celeste canceled it. Said we didn't need some doctor putting labels on me. That once you get one, they take everything away. He huffed a bitter laugh. Should have realized she meant my everything, he added. We'd like you to see someone when you get home, Alvarez said. Voluntarily. Not so anyone can take things from you, but so we can build protections with your input, while you still have full capacity to participate. He nodded slowly. I'll go, he said. With her. He jerked his head toward me. She can sit in, he added. Catch whatever I miss.
My chest tightened. That's up to you and the doctor, I said. But yeah, I'll be there if you want me. He looked down the table, at the neat stack of evidence that represented months of erosion. What happens to them? He asked. Celeste, that man, Vic. They'll be processed, Alvarez said. Charges filed. Their lawyers will argue they didn't know, that you consented. But between your age, the documented cognitive issues we already see, the video, the threatening voicemail, and your retraction, it's a solid case for exploitation. He grimaced. I don't want to ruin her life, he said weakly. I just want mine back. You're not ruining her life, I said. She made choices. This is the receipt. He met my gaze. You sound like your mother, he said. She used to say, if you don't want it in writing, don't do it. I smiled sadly. She also said, never sign anything you haven't read twice, I replied. Guess that part skipped a generation. He winced, then nodded. I stopped reading, he said, because reading hurt. Because numbers stopped lining up. I thought letting someone else read for me was an act of trust. Turns out it was abdication. He sighed. I don't want that for the rest of my life, he said. I want help, not a handler. We can work with that, Alvarez said. By the time we finished the statements, Dad looked wrung out. His shoulders had slumped, but there was a strange lightness in his eyes, like dragging the truth into the open had cleared a little fog. Outside the station, the sun was lower, the heat less brutal. A breeze off the water carried the smell of salt and fried food. We sat on a concrete bench while Alvarez arranged a cab back to the hotel. Dad stared at his hands. I keep thinking about that text, he said. The one she sent. Using my phone. I left with your stepmom. We're not coming back. She wanted you to let go, he said quietly. To throw up your hands. To say, fine, drown if you want to. That was the temptation, I admitted. For a minute, I almost did. And then you froze my cards, he said. Changed my locks, booked a flight, showed up with cops and cameras. You ignored my words and listened to my history instead. He shook his head, amazed. I would have hated that, he said, if the roles were reversed. Having my kids swoop in, change everything, tell me I wasn't as in control as I thought. You did hate it, I said. On paper, anyway. He huffed. Yeah, he said. On paper. He looked at me, eyes clearer now. But sitting here, he added, with my head a little less foggy, it feels like being pulled out of a rip current. Violent, embarrassing, necessary. I watched a small group of tourists cross the street, beach towels over their shoulders, oblivious to the tiny crisis going on in our lot. You know what Mom told me before she died? I asked softly. He blinked. What? He said. If there comes a day, I said, when he doesn't know how far he's drifting, don't let fear of being the bad guy stop you from throwing him a rope. He stared at me. She said that? He whispered. I nodded. And she signed the will accordingly, I said. House in my name, accounts with dual oversight. Not because she didn't trust you, because she was planning for the version of you who'd be scared to admit he needed help. His face crumpled. I thought she was just making sure you were taken care of, he said. She was, I replied. She just knew sometimes that would mean protecting you from decisions you'd regret.
He wiped his eyes with the heel of his hand. "I don't deserve you," he said quietly. I shrugged. "Deserving's not the metric," I said. "You're my father. Mom loved you. I loved her. That's the chain. You being worth the trouble doesn't enter into it." He laughed, startled. "Leave it to you to make loyalty sound like a math problem," he said. "It's intel math," I said. "Follow the line that leads to protection, not to comfort." The cab pulled up. On the ride back, he dozed with his head against the window, the city light strobing across his face. I watched the skyline, the dark ocean beyond, and thought about all the missions I'd run where the person we were trying to save didn't know they were in danger, didn't want our help, or had been convinced we were the enemy. This time, the debrief wouldn't end with a plane home and a file stamped closed. This time, the real work would start in my own house. With a man who'd always been the protector, learning how to be protected without feeling erased. Back in Virginia, the air felt thinner, colder, cleaner. The fall had moved on while I was gone. The maple on my street was almost bare now, branches etched against a pale sky. Dad stood in my driveway like he was arriving at a rental he hadn't booked. His small suitcase sat at his feet. I grabbed the handle. "Guest rooms this way," I said. "Bathrooms across the hall. My neighbor's a nurse. She knows you're here if we need backup." He stepped inside, eyes skimming the walls automatically, like he was checking structural integrity. Family photos lined the entryway. Mom and Dad on their wedding day, me at boot camp graduation, Mom sitting on our old swing with a book, Dad and me in front of my first car, both squinting against the sun. He paused in front of one, Mom holding my hand at a science fair, Dad off to one side with a camera. "I missed a lot," he murmured. "You caught more than you think," I said. "We'll fill in the rest together." The guest room smelled like clean sheets and fabric softener. I put a small lamp on the nightstand, a digital clock, and an extra blanket folded at the foot of the bed. My uniform hung in the closet, next to an old jacket I'd pulled from a storage bin. His. "Is that—" he started. I nodded. "Mom saved it," I said. "Figured you'd want it someday." He reached out, fingers brushing the worn fabric. For a second, I saw him 30 years younger, same jaw, fewer lines, the man who'd built my treehouse on weekends. "Feels like somebody else's life," he said softly. "Pieces of it still fit," I said. Over the next few weeks, life shifted. The neurologist's office smelled like antiseptic and mint. Dad aced some tests, flubbed others. Early cognitive impairment, they said. Not hopeless, not nothing. A name we could plan around. We left with a folder full of recommendations and a list of things to avoid. Certain meds, dehydration, isolation. Back at the bank, the manager's office felt smaller than I remembered from childhood, when I'd tag along and spin in the guest chair while Dad talked CDs and interest rates. This time, I sat beside him while he signed forms revoking Celeste's access, closing cards, adding safeguards. "I hate this," he muttered as we initialed yet another page. "I know," I said. "I hate that we need it, not that we're doing it." We found a daily money manager through the senior center, a no-nonsense woman named Patrice, who wore bright scarves and spoke about budgets the way generals talked about logistics. "We're building you a defensive line," she told Dad. "You can still call the plays. We're just keeping the linebackers awake." He actually smiled at that. Nights were harder. Sometimes he'd wander into the kitchen at 2 a.m., standing in the pool of light from the open fridge, confused. "Looking for the milk," he'd say, even if it was right in front of him. I'd guide him back to bed, the old anger I used to feel around him replaced by a tired tenderness I hadn't expected. I don't want to be a burden, he said once, lying awake while the clock glowed 3:17. Your work, I said, not a burden. There's a difference. During the day, when I was at the base, he puttered. The first time I came home to find him in the backyard, kneeling in the dirt, I panicked, until I saw the little rows of plants. Tomatoes, peppers, a struggling rosemary bush. Thought your yard could use some structure, he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. Don't yell about the sprinklers. I checked the valves twice. The sight of him in my yard, not in some distant hotel lobby, did something to my chest I couldn't quite name. One evening, I came home in uniform. The house smelled like garlic and onions. He'd started dinner, following a recipe card in Mom's handwriting. He looked up as I stepped into the kitchen, my dress blues still crisp, the silver oak leaves catching the overhead light. You look like you're about to brief the president, he said. Just a colonel, I replied. But she's scarier. He smiled, then sobered. Does it bother you? He asked. Having me here? After everything? Knowing I chose her narrative over yours for so long? I leaned against the counter, loosening my collar. It bothers me that she had that much space in your head, I said. It bothers me that I let distance make it easier for her. But I'm not keeping you here out of pity. I'm keeping you here because Mom asked me to protect you. And because underneath all the crap, you're still the guy who taught me how to read a map and double-check an answer. He nodded slowly. I keep thinking about that complaint, he said, seeing my name next to those words. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for letting something with your name in it say those things. You don't have to, I said. Just don't let it happen again. We did what we needed to do to neutralize it. The rest is maintenance. He glanced at the back door, where the garden was visible in the fading light. Can you come outside for a minute? He asked. Before you change? I followed him. The evening air was cool, smelling like damp dirt and cut grass. The sky was streaked pink and gold, the small tomato plants casting long shadows. He moved slowly, but with purpose, checking the soil with a practiced hand. These ones need more sun, he muttered. We'll move them next weekend. Make a plan. He looked down at the plants, then up at me. You saved my life, he said quietly. Not just my bank account. My soul, I guess. The part of me that still wants to be more than a cautionary tale. I shook my head. You saved your life, I said. When you finally said no to feeling safe. When you admitted she took your wallet. I just brought the paperwork and the plane ticket. He smiled, a little crooked. You and your paperwork, he said. Your mother would be proud. She always said courage wasn't about grand gestures. It was about signatures and choices when nobody's clapping. I looked at him, at the jacket on his shoulders, at the lines time had carved into his face. The grand gesture was never my style, I said. I just refused to let go of the rope when someone else was trying to pull you away. We stood there a while, not talking, just listening to the wind through the fence slats, the distant hum of a car, the faint click of a neighbor's porch light turning on. Eventually, he sighed. I know there are things I'll forget, he said. Dates, words, maybe even parts of this. But I hope I never forget that you came. That you didn't just write me off as lost. You might, I said honestly. But the bank records won't. The court orders won't. The doctor's notes won't. And I won't. He nodded. Then maybe that's enough, he said. Later, after he'd gone to bed and the house had settled into its nighttime creaks, I stood at the back door in my t-shirt and sweatpants, looking out at the dark shape of his small garden. On the fridge, the plane ticket back from Miami was taped up, corners curling. Next to it, a printout of a bank confirmation. Access revoked. Fraud protections enabled. Further over, my duty roster. 3 documents, 3 worlds. Different battles, same principle. Protect the vulnerable, even when they're stubborn, even when they say they're fine. Especially when someone else profits from their confusion. My phone buzzed. A text from Hamilton. He settling in? I typed back. Yeah. Accounts locked down, garden planted, narratives untangled. It's a start. I slipped my phone into my pocket and turned off the kitchen light. In the dark, the glow from the yard light caught a flash of gray, my father's hair just visible through the guest room window as he moved past. Once, he'd held my hand crossing streets, guiding me through traffic. Now I held his through paperwork, doctor visits, and the long, slow walk back from someone else's influence. People like Celeste would say I overstepped, that I betrayed him, that I stole his independence. But standing there in my own doorway, watching the faint silhouette of the man I'd nearly lost to a pretty story and a handful of forged receipts, I knew the truth. Sometimes love isn't letting go when someone else is pulling. It's holding on just tight enough that when they finally see the edge they were pushed toward, they're still close enough to pull back. Sometimes love is just not letting go when someone else is trying to pull them away.